Okay, so I thought I'd talk about my favorite, expanded universe book because it was the first, and I am using the cover art of the first expanded universe anything that I bought when I was about 12, which is Dark Empire. And this is the cover that I saw when um, uh, when I walked into the comic book store. And um, after I finish this, I'm not going to try to have this be too long, but I want to talk about this because people want to complain about this comic, like, oh, you brought back Palpatine, blah 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 blah. But the problem is that Dark Empire was at a time when we had nothing else really. I mean, the Thrawn trilogy, we had like one book out of it at this point, and I didn't even know anything about the Thrawn trilogy at the time. I wasn't a book reader. I was into comics more. When I saw this cover with the World Devastator, I was like, oh my god, there's more Star Wars and I didn't know about it. And so I, at the time, so I never got issue 6 at the time. I tried to get it, but I couldn't find it. So I had issues 1 to 5. So I bought those all on my own back in the day, but I could never get 6. I did find 6 on eBay a year or two ago, so I do have the full collection now. But and I also in Japanese got Dark Empire 1 and 2 as a set, and because although I haven't read it, I should probably get around to reading it. It's in graphic novel form for the Japanese versions, but I want to read the Japanese versions because I just love Dark Empire. I didn't read Dark Empire 2 or Empire's End until like what, a year or two ago, and they are alright, but the Dark Empire 1 is where it's at. And you can kind of ignore the other two, they're not that special. I don't really care about them. I mean, I read them, but I wasn't too happy with the art style. The art style was very different. The art style in this one was much better. Um, but I remember this piss turd group I was in that was dedicated to like talking about EU and stuff like that. They that group basically they did a podcast or something about Dark Empire, and I really wanted to join in, but due to time differences and whatever, they also got Mandalore to join in on that one too, I believe. But if they wanted somebody who was I wouldn't say an expert, but there when it was released, they should have asked me because I was there. This is why I'm an EU fan, is this particular comic book series. I'm a massive fan of Dark Empire. And I wanted to use this particular cover with this look because this is what I saw and what got me into the expanded universe. Now, I won't go too much into the story, but I just want to give my thoughts on it and the thoughts that I had at the time about Dark Empire, because you're not going to get this opinion from somebody like a Ryan Kinnell or some of these other people who weren't around for when it was released. You're not going to get those kinds of opinions. I'm the one who can give you this. So, I didn't read issue 1 because the first one I saw was issue 2 on the rack, so I bought issue 2. And I forgot which issue it was, but the thing that got me was the World Devastator, which is cool. That nice big thing in the background. The fact that Luke does turn to the dark side. They tried to retcon that shit. That's bullshit. Luke was dark side and Leia brought him back. So don't listen to anybody who says that Luke never turned to the dark side. He turned to the dark side. It's in the book. You can see that he turned to the dark side and Leia brings him back. He had the yellow eyes. He was, he was going Sith and Leia saved him. So, but because of that experience later in, it gives him a different view of the Force than what Yoda or Obi-Wan or any of them had, who were part of the Jedi Council or part of the Old Republic and whatever. This is why he allowed for attachments and he allowed for certain things when he created his Praxium on Yavin 4. And he was like training new Jedi. He was much more lax because he saw the necessity of having familial connections. And that was partially because of Leia. It was partially because of what he saw with the reborn or essence Palpatine in this series. This series actually, this comic book, forget 2 and 3, but the first Dark Empire comic series, those first 6 issues, have not. And this isn't just because they were at the beginning with the Thrawn trilogy and that made them, like a centerpiece of the modern expanded universe. It was that it's not just that they had to connect it because it was the first. Is that when you look at Luke's progression as a character, like pre-Dark Empire and post-Dark Empire, in terms of timeline, not in terms of when the books were written or whatever, but you'd say, let's say, take a Truce at Bakura, which takes place, like, starts the day after or something after Return of the Jedi, and then talks about that stuff that happens in that book. And there's a lot of things that build up throughout that. And then you look at, because this takes place after the Thrawn trilogy, so the Thrawn trilogy happens, and then not too long after that, you get Dark Empire. And you can see how the clone of Saboth had a massive impact on him, and how he had to fight his own clone and all this other stuff, and you can see where there were hints of that push towards the dark side, and this kind of pushed it over. And then because of his experiences in the dark side, you can see how he taught his students at the Praxium and how he taught Jason, Jaina, and Anakin Solo. And it could be argued that Jason turned because of that, but that's a totally different issue. But the Dark Empire comics, the original Dark Empire, not Dark Empire 2, not Empire's End, but this particular set is a catalyst for a lot of Luke's character development in the future. So you can think about this. He meets Mara Jade, and then she's gone for, a year or whatever. And, you don't hear much about her. She's doing her own thing with Talon Card and whatnot. But, by Leia saving Luke and bringing him back from the dark side, what that said to him was how important his connections were. I think I just mentioned how he allowed people at the Praxium to, have close connections with others, have families, whatever, and whatnot. But, and he taught the Jedi way a bit in a very different way than what, Yoda and them did. And part of that, I think, comes from Dark Empire and his experience there, being turned back to the light thanks to Leia. Now, another thing that got me really interested besides, the World Devastators was the E-Wing. Because, at the time, all we had was the original trilogy, the Marvel comics, which I never even knew about at the time. I didn't pay attention. That they were being made when I was too young to, even know what comic books were. Splinter of Mind's Eye came out before I was born, so I didn't even know about that till much, much later. So to me, But of course, I did have the Ewok movies, so I had watched Ewok movies on TV before. So, um, but the thing is that besides the Ewok movies, we had no Star Wars, and I had no Star Wars, and so the only fighters we knew about were like the X-wing, the A-wing, the Y-wing, the B-wing, and then the TIE fighter, TIE bomber, TIE interceptor, Star destroyers. The basic stuff. Um, but the E-wing, the World Devastators, and then the computer controlled TIE fighters or whatever that came out of the World Devastators from after they like sucked up all the resources off of a planet. the that whole they were moving into a new generation of starfighters, and the fact that we had the E-wing, even though in the future EU books you don't get much of the E-wing, and it mostly just sticks to X-wings and modified X-wings and upgraded X-wings, but like Jaina Solo's stealth X-wing or whatever it is, we didn't have anything new, and the E-wing was something brand new, and the E-wing always stuck with me. I always wanted I had some of the plastic model kits at the time, and I had built them like the Y-wing and the X-wing and stuff, but I had always wanted an E-wing. There was never an E-wing. I don't even know if anything was made. I know in the Micro Machines they never made an E-wing. I really wanted a toy or something of an E-wing, because the E-wing, because it was the first new starfighter for the Rebellion / New Republic, which at the time I didn't really realize about all this other stuff, but the E-wing had a massive impact on me, and the just seeing that there was a new starfighter being used by the good guys technically was something so I couldn't imagine it. Oh my god, the stories are still continuing. There's a new Star Wars story. There's there's a new starfighter. Oh my god. The joy that I had at the time, because we didn't have anything else. This was at the beginning of the modern expanded universe. There was no, there was no Tales of the Jedi with Nomi Sunrider and all these cool characters, Exar Kun and whatnot. We had nothing. And to get something like this that was so well made. Yes, I know now about, how Timothy Zahn and them were fighting over which should be chronologically first and all that other crap. But at the time I didn't even know about, when I saw Dark Empire, I hadn't known anything about the Thrawn trilogy. So to me, all I knew was Dark Empire. And then after a couple years later is when I realized, oh, there's all these books about Star Wars. Oh my god, I gotta read all of them. But everything started here with Dark Empire. And I demand anybody who is a fan of Star Wars canon, real canon, let's just be honest, real canon, you must read Dark Empire. You must enjoy it, because you have to put yourself in a different place when you read it. You have to think about when it was written while you're reading it, because otherwise you'll compare it to stuff like the Darth Bane trilogy, and I can't argue that there's anything better than the Darth Bane trilogy in terms of Star Wars books. I love the Darth Bane trilogy, but I think I read it in 4 days. I read all 3 books or something like that. Or it was it was under a week I did it. But I got so into that. Now, if you take that and you compare, let's say, the Darth Bane trilogy to something like this, or you compare this to the Republic comics, I know Mandalore was into the multimedia project and the Republic comics and things like that, but he wasn't. He had a whole universe of EU already there for him just to devour. Whereas if you put yourself in the headspace of somebody who was there, who actually read Dark Empire at the beginning when there was no other, or read the Thrawn trilogy when there was no other, it was only Dark Empire and Thrawn trilogy, and they had only started really developing the ideas for what the expanded universe should be. If you put yourself in that headspace and try to put yourself in the sense that this is the first expanded universe thing I am reading, and you forget about everything else, you'll start to understand what a joy the Dark Empire comics are. You ignore everything you've heard about Dark Empire. Just go into it without, any previous misconceptions of it. You go into it, you say, this is the only expanded universe. This and the Thrawn trilogy are the only thing that exists right now. Let's read it. And you go in with that mindset, and you will understand the joy of somebody who is a Star Wars fan in, growing up when we had nothing. And this was the first ray of sunshine for us, that we got new stories. And then you'll finally understand why, I'm probably one of the only people who will say that Dark Empire 1 is a masterpiece. Because it was the first thing of the EU that I read, but I'm also in a different headspace because it was the only thing the EU really had at that time for the modern expanded universe, because I didn't know about the other stuff and, whatever. So I really think that Dark Empire 1, forget the other two, only the first one. I highly recommend you find some way to read it, because the original 6 Dark Empire 1 comics are amazing. Even if you don't like the artwork, pay attention to the story and put yourself in that headspace that there is no other expanded universe. We only have Dark Empire and the Thrawn trilogy. And you go into it with that mindset, and you will probably enjoy it much more than you would with all these other misconceptions about it, or, oh god, they revived Palpatine, because you've already heard about it, right? I will never say a bad thing about Dark Empire 1. Dark Empire 2 and Empire's End, I'll talk trash about them. But I will not say a bad word about Dark Empire 1, because it is the reason why I am a Canon fan, a Star Wars Canon fan. This is the comic series that did it for me, and this picture was blazing into my mind the minute I saw it. And the day that I bought this comic, I had gone to look at X-Men comics, because every month the comic book store would get their new comics in, and I'd go every Saturday or something. I'd walk up there and just take a look, because they scattered when the X-Men comics came out, when the X-Factor comics came out, when the X-Force comics came out, and stuff like that. So I would go, and I'd go pretty often and look, and it just happened that day this beautiful picture was right there, and I was like, oh my god, I have to have this. And the fact that Luke is in, if you look carefully, I'll move the picture up a little bit, you'll see he looks like Darth Vader. And you're just like, oh my god, what happened? Why is Luke like this? What is he doing? Just that the whole, that minute that you see something like this, it's life-changing. And I want people to understand that Dark Empire is a masterpiece. If you go through and read it and you enjoy it, you should enjoy it. Don't compare it to anything else. Think of it in its own little, of course you have the entire expanded universe. I'm not going to deny the expanded universe, because the expanded universe is the canon of Star Wars. But if you, I think I've said it multiple times already, that you go into reading it in a different headspace, and things will be very different. Your opinion of it will change greatly. And because no one else does that sort of thing. No one else can, because no one was born at that time. You look at any of the other, expanded universe YouTubers, or whatever you want to call them, content creators, I don't care. None of them were there when Dark Empire was released. you never hear about the people like me who were there at the beginning. And that's where I'm different than all of these people, because all of them are much younger than me, like 15 plus years younger than me, or they weren't into the expanded universe until much later. They didn't start at the beginning, at the starting point of it. And um, you know, the the overall is that the overall thing I want to make it clear is that Dark Empire um, is an incredibly important um, work. It helped develop the basis of the entire expanded universe, um, of course, but even as a work of its own, like taken in its own, bubble. You take just Dark Empire 1 in its own little bubble and you read it and you just say, watch episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then you jump right into this. And you go in with that headspace, oh, I just watched the end of Return of the Jedi. Now I'm going to start here. And you, don't even read the Thrawn trilogy. Just jump into this one. And, because, that's what I had to do. Because I didn't know about the Thrawn trilogy. I bought Heir to the Empire much later, but, this was the beginning of it for me. And so if you do it in that sense, and you take it in that sense, from that perspective, your opinion of Dark Empire will change. You won't have those misconceptions about it because of what you've heard online about it and all this other garbage. You will enjoy it much more, and you'll appreciate it much more, I think. So this got a little wordy, but I wanted to explain my absolute dying love for this work. I didn't have a chance to in that particular podcast with another group of people, so I decided to do it on my own because I want people to know that Dark Empire is an amazing work. You should all read it, and read it in its own little bubble first, and then after you've read that, then take what you've learned from the expanded universe and look around that through the lens of Dark Empire, rather than looking at it from the expanded universe lens on one little work. If you look at it by itself and then expand out from it, you will enjoy it much, much more, and you won't worry about the artwork, you won't worry about any of it. You will like it much, much more that way. So, I plan on doing more of these videos about expanded universe stuff. So just keep an eye out for it. Do subscribe. Do talk to me about Dark Empire. Do talk to me about the canon of Star Wars, which is the expanded universe. If you think I mean canon, if you think canon means rat, nope. I will not have that conversation. We will not discuss that. I want nothing to do with the rat. Subscribe, whatever you want, and I will do more of these kinds of, discussions about, my impressions of different EU works that I've read through and stuff. So, stay tuned for those. Also, I have links down below where you can see where most of my political commentary and stuff is uploaded to. So please check those links as well, because I do a lot of dissecting and explaining of news articles and things, but I can't say certain things here, so I put them in these different places. So please check those sites as well. I post a lot of content there, so you'll have a lot to catch up on. So see you next time.